There's never been anybody more interested in the rags to riches story of Dale Earnhardt than his own son, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Most marveled at the Earnhardt mystique from afar, separated by the gulf that exists between fan and public figure. Dale Jr. wondered what made his dad tick while living under the same roof. People told stories for years about 10-second exchanges with Dale Sr. at an autograph signing. Dale Jr. lived for those same kinds of momentary snippets of approval.
All my life, he has looked at me like, when's this kid going to figure it out? When's this kid going to show me something or, quit disappointing me or whatever it is, And I guess as a father, you just want your kids to be excellent and you want them to excel and you want them to show initiative and drive and determination. And I maybe wasn't showing him what he was looking for. And obviously, I wasn't getting a lot of the results that I was hoping to get in the car up until 1998. And he was not the kind of person that would say, I love you a lot. He wasn't the kind of person that would give you a hug or put his arm around you. He put his arm around you, but more in a buddy kind of way. And when you failed or when you were hurt or disappointed or got rejected by someone, he didn't have a lot of time for that. And he knew you were going to get over it. He knew you were going to be fine. And he was sort of tough love, and he was who he was. The person is who he was at home. He wasn't any different.
November 1998. All Dale Jr. needed to do to clinch the Busch Series championship was start the season finale at Homestead. The younger Earnhardt looked forward to the race, if for no other reason than to see the look in his daddy's eyes.
I knew, if we start this race, win the championship, I knew there would be a point where I was going to see him later that day, and I was going to probably see something new. I saw the pride, I saw the love and the happiness and joy that I'd hoped I would see.
You're not going to hear a lot about Dale Earnhardt's statistics in this episode. Lord knows his legendary successes on the track have been well documented over the years. Our goal is pretty much the same as Dale Jr.'s, to discover who the man behind the gargoyle sunglasses really was. One tough customer, Man in Black, the Intimidator, or just plain old Dale. Really, who was Dale Earnhardt? Dale Earnhardt Jr. visited Victory Lane with his father many times over the years. Jr. and his older sister Kelly first appeared in their dad's Wrangler ads in 1982. Capturing the 1998 Busch Series championship represented Dale Jr.'s debut at center stage, with Sr. watching from the sidelines. Forget the glory, the check, and even the trophy that came along with the title. Dale Sr.'s approval is all that truly mattered to Dale Jr.
I was doing something that I knew he had done a lot. We were celebrating wins, we were celebrating a championship, and we riding in the back of that truck at Homestead and all those little moments. I've been with him in those moments when he was doing that. It was his own career. I've celebrated championships and wins in Victory Circle, and being able to be in that moment with him when the win was about, I was the driver. When I was with him before all those years, he was the center of the universe in Victory Lane or at the at the banquet speaking and all. And in those, I was when I was at the banquet in 98, I got video. My favorite part's video of him watching me speak. That's my favorite part of that whole experience, was looking down there and watching him watch me on that stage. So, because it's just incredible because he was so hard to please. God, he was hard to please.
Dale Jr. wanted to keep winning, but not just for the sake of winning and winning alone.
I just wanted to keep doing things that would keep bringing that reaction. I was happy in the moment. We had fun in Victory Lane, and I just was like, all right, I got to keep doing this. I got to keep, making him happy and making him glad that he made these decisions, to involve me in this, which wasn't a pressure type of deal. It wasn't like, I got a lot of pressure on me to do this. I was just anxious to, what's the next thing that me and Tony Sr. and Tony Jr. and all of us can do together to make Dad happy.
Steve Wade's career in the NASCAR Media Center mirrored Earnhardt's rise to prominence on the track. Wade covered Earnhardt's first Winston Cup start at Charlotte, his first win at Bristol, all 7 of his championships, and the controversies surrounding his fatal accident. Wade was named executive editor of Grand National Scene just months after Earnhardt captured his first Winston Cup championship. When Earnhardt heard that Wade was moving to North Carolina, he made a generous offer.
So I was moving to Concord, and I was staying with a friend of mine for 3 months until school was over and my family could come down. Earnhardt found out about that, and he said, wait a minute. He said, come to my house right now. So I drove to his house, and I walked in, and he showed me the entire lower level of the house. He said, you can live here. You got your own private bathroom, your own bedroom, you know, things of that nature, and your own private entrance. Now, imagine a champion of this sport asking a writer to do the same today.
Wade's sense of ethics as an objective journalist, yeah, that was a thing once upon a time, kept him from accepting Earnhardt's offer.
I was very tempted to do that. And I said, Dale, I really, really appreciate this, but you have to understand it's not good for the editor of a racing newspaper to be living with the champion. And he understood.
13 years later, Earnhardt had added 6 more championships to his resume. While in New York City for that year's banquet, driver and journalist sat down for one of the most memorable interviews either had ever experienced. And then they just talked, like the 2 longtime friends they were.
He won his 7th championship, and he was up there in New York, and he was in the presidential suite, as you might imagine, and he invited only a handful of writers to come up and join him and have an exclusive interview. Might have been 5 of us. We conduct the interview. Oh, I gotta tell you, Rick, this was a major league interview.
Yeah.
He had 2 butlers there, had food spread out,
Yeah.
anything you want to drink, you know, that sort of thing. And we had the interview, and he was sitting in the Kennedy rocking chair as he conducted that interview with the 5 of us. And after it was over, we thanked him, and we all started to leave. And he said, wages. He always called me wages for some reason. Hold up. Don't go. Come back and let's talk. So I went back and we sat down on the couch together. And as we usually do, we talked about politics and we talked about current events and that nature. And, you know, we weren't always in agreement when it came to politics. Dale was pretty conservative, but we enjoyed the talk together. So that to me is the kind of thing that I enjoyed having with him.
When Ken Schrader first moved to North Carolina from his native Missouri in the mid-1980s, he was driving for the Richmond, Virginia-based team owner Junie Donlevy. That gave Schrader plenty of free time to get to know the area, and he had a guide in Earnhardt.
First year I moved down in 86. I lived down here, moved down in August 86. So then I'm down here, and I don't have a shop or anything. And I'm driving from this Donlevy in Richmond. So I spent a lot of time at Dale's, you know. I mean, you can only, you know, you got to have something to do when you get up. So, and Dale had bought the farm, I don't remember what year, but I'd go over there and help him jack with stuff and that. I got to spend, I wouldn't say we were best buddies or nothing, but he was very good to me. I had a lot of fun with him. He had a heart of gold, you know, and stuff he did.
That's not to say, however, that Earnhardt and Schrader were too friendly to have had any run-ins on the racetrack.
He was 100% tough guy, intimidator. When he was doing his job, buckled up in that car, that's the way everybody thought of him, you know.
Schrader once told Tony Stewart that his personality reminded him of both Earnhardt and the legendary A.J. Foyt. You might want to sit down for this one.
Tony, one time, a year or so ago, and he did something, I forget what it was, but I texted him, I said, wow, you remind me of Dale Sr. and AJ. You're a very sweet asshole.
Kyle Petty ran the first 5 races of his Winston Cup career in 1979, Earnhardt's rookie season. They raced against each other for more than 20 full seasons, and certainly they'd rubbed sheet metal many times over the years. One incident in particular stood out to Petty.
I'll tell you this story. We were at Wilkesboro, and he beat, and he banged, and he clashed, and he gouged on me. I had to be 22, 23, young. I was young. He beat and banged, and finally, he passed. I let him around me. He knocked me going into turn 1. And we came off 2, and we came on to, I drove straight through his ass. He spun down into, and if you remember Wilkesboro was the racetrack, and then there was some grass, and then they had those red wooden poles that were right before you'd get to the chain link fence. You know what I mean? And when I saw him, they were poles flying in the air, out in the grass.
After the race, Earnhardt headed straight for Petty. This was going to be big.
I was so pissed off when I spun him. I mean, that's as mad, honestly, as mad as I could get in a car. And the race is over with, and they got it all back together. And I don't know where he finished, but I didn't run any good. I may have finished top 10 or 15, but he come over after the race. I saw him coming, and I'm thinking, holy crap, this is going to be big. This is going to be my first friggin' NASCAR fight. You know, and you know how he could come up to you and he'd drink his old arm around you and kind of get you about half out in a headlock. And he said, you wasn't going to take any more shit off me, was you? And I said, not today, man. I said, you just caught me at a bad time. And he looked at me and he said, that's what you got to do. You got to stand up for yourself. Turn around, walked off.
Here's where Petty, son of Richard Petty, stands on the subject of the greatest driver in NASCAR history.
This is Kyle Petty speaking. I don't believe Dale was the greatest race car driver or the greatest talent that ever sat in a race car. But I do believe Dale may have had the most desire, the most grit, and the most determination to make something out of nothing of anybody I ever met in my life. And I think that made up and made him who he was, and made him the great race car driver that we see, and made him the champion that you see. You know, if he hadn't had something deep in his soul that drove him that way, he would have just been another driver. But there was something else in there that forced him to take a 10th place car and run second with it, take a 5th place car and win with it, to rub and grind and gouge and make you think if you don't move, he's going to move you. It was just a different approach.
Of course, Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt both had friends in the garage, but with very few exceptions, not good friends. That's the cost of being a racer. Befriend somebody off the track, and there's a chance you might cut them a break on it.
Sometimes I laugh, or I don't laugh. I guess it makes me smile when I hear people say that they were good friends with Dale. Because Dale's like my dad. He didn't have good friends. The good friends he does have don't drive race cars. Okay? He has acquaintances, and he's cordial, and he'll talk to you, and he'll be around you, but he doesn't open up to you. Dale and Neil Bonnet were as close to friends as two drivers can probably get.
When Adam Petty died, countless strangers from all over the world sent condolence cards. The NASCAR garage was a cocoon in which Kyle Petty had literally spent his entire life. Many NASCAR insiders consoled Petty over the loss as well. Dale Earnhardt was not one of them.
Anytime he would see me coming, he would turn and go the other way. After Adam's accident, he never spoke to me.
Petty and Earnhardt were both entered in the 2001 edition of the 24 Hours of Daytona. Both finished respective early morning driving stints and by chance happened to be walking back to their motorhomes at the same time. This time, there was no way for Earnhardt to avoid Petty. Earnhardt invited Petty to his motor coach. They chatted for a moment or two before Earnhardt finally addressed the 900-pound gorilla staring them down.
He said, I got to tell you, he said, I hadn't talked to you since Adam. And I said, yeah. He said, I just didn't know what to say. He said, that hit so close to home for me. He said, with Dale Jr., he said, I didn't have anything to say. And I told him, I said, listen, I understand, man. I said, you're not the only one that doesn't know what to say. And I said, and I wouldn't know what to say. Nobody knows what to say in those situations. And when things like that happen. And I said, and people, especially you, who has a son that races, I do understand that. And I said, it's not a problem, man. I said, we've known each other our whole lives. And I said, I started running the same year you were Rookie of the Year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we just talked. He talked about Dale Jr. and Dale and Adam racing at Myrtle Beach together and stuff that he knew and had watched. And, we talked about Junior a little bit and about Adam and about just life. We just talked about a little bit of everything. And we must sit there probably an hour or more. And got up and went our separate ways.
A few weeks earlier, Earnhardt had called Winston Cup director Gary Nelson and asked him to come over to Dale Earnhardt Incorporated's palatial shops in Mooresville, North Carolina. Despite Earnhardt's absolute refusal to wear a full-face helmet, despite the grief he'd given Brett Bodine for using a Hans device, despite his kerosene rags, ants, and candy asses comments, Dale Earnhardt wanted to talk about safety.
December of 2000. We're getting ready to start 2001 season. I don't know if I've ever told this story publicly. Dale Sr. calls me and says, I would like you to come to the shop because I'm concerned about safety. And his shop is DEI, where Dale Jr. is now becoming a top driver, right? So Dale Sr. never had this kind of a call with me. He was like, safety was like, yeah, it's a rule, in his, but he had changed in this December because his child was driving the car, I believe. I mean, let me just put it this way. I believe he looked at it differently that December.
Nelson headed to DEI with fellow NASCAR official Steve Peterson, and once there, Earnhardt took them around the shop, showing them the team's cars and what he thought could be improved.
They're building their cars at DEI, and he's showing me parts of the frame. He said, we could make a gusset here, make that mandatory, and we could do this here and make that, the car will be safer. So he had ideas on safety. So he went, I brought Steve there with me, and we spent an afternoon. I think we looked at the frames of the cars and the way the roll bars were being put in and all of that. And Dale had ideas, and I was happy to listen to his ideas and truly hear what he was saying.
Nelson came away impressed, not only because of Earnhardt's concern for his son, but also because it seemed to be such a departure from Earnhardt's stance on safety in the first place.
At that point in time, I thought, well, that's a departure from... Yeah. He was the last guy. He had a seat in his car that was out of a van where everybody else had molded seats. Yeah. He was the last guy with an open face helmet, right? He just had a system that worked for him that he trusted. And he felt like that worked for him. He'd been in a lot of crashes in his career and always survived them and came back to race more. So it would be hard to argue with Dale Earnhardt Sr. in December of 2000 that what his system was bad.
On pit road, just before the start of the Daytona 500, Kyle Petty found himself having a powerfully emotional moment. The weight of everything that had taken place, that had been taken from him, was crashing down all at once.
I had kind of eased off to the side by myself because for me, that Daytona in 2001 was to really be the first year that Adam was going to run a Cup car. And I got real emotional I'll be honest, I was standing there crying. I had my sunglasses on a little bit, and I was standing there kind of crying by myself because I was just overwhelmed to think that what could have been. You know what I mean? What could have been in that moment, and then that wasn't happening.
For months, Earnhardt had avoided talking to Petty, or even making eye contact. This time, just before the start of the 2001 Daytona 500, Earnhardt made a beeline for Petty.
He saw me, and he come over, and, he put his arm around me, and he said, it's going to be all right, man. He said, things happen, and it's going to be all right. He said, you'll be good. You'll be okay today. He said, just stay out of trouble. Everything will work out. And we just hugged each other. And, you know, he put his arm around me and hugged me, and I hugged him, and we went our separate ways, and that was the last thing that we said to each other.
With that hug, they parted ways. It was time for the race to start. Next time on Firestorm, 2000, 2001, the years that forever changed NASCAR, the 2001 Daytona 500. Subscribe now to our YouTube channel and follow the Scene Vault podcast and the Firestorm documentary series on its own dedicated podcast channel so you don't miss a single moment.
What happened to that second row? It looked like Sterling Marlin did not come up through the gears quickly.
Boy, when somebody in front of you doesn't go, it really backs the field up right on a start like that.
They're not wasting time. They're 3 wide, 4 wide down the back straightaway. There goes teammates Mike Skinner in the 31, Dale Earnhardt in the black 3.